Thank you for joining us in this episode 3 of our series on water chillers or chillers. Today we are going to learn aspects related to the cooling tower water circuit. If you want to start the series at episode 1, right now the link to the first video is showing up. The link to the previous video is going to show up as well. Stay with us and subscribe to the channel and become part of our community today. As we can see in the animation, we have a water circuit that has nothing to do with the ice water that goes to the building. We will call this circuit of fresh water from the cooling tower. You must understand that the only objective of this circuit is to cool the chiller condenser. So we can summarize the operation of the installation in these 7 steps. Step 1. The heat of the people inside the offices passes into the air, because the people are warmer than the air in the offices. Step 2. Now the air in the offices has the warmth of the people. It transmits it or passes to the frozen water, because the air has more temperature than the frozen water. Step 3. The frozen water enters the chiller, and now it has the heat of the people. Since the water has a higher temperature, it manages to pass it on to the refrigerant. Step 4. Now the refrigerant has the heat of the people, but in this case there is a drawback that the refrigerant has a very low temperature, so the refrigerant must be passed through the compressor inside the chiller and reach the condenser. Step 5. The fresh water is carried by the pumps to the chiller condenser. Since the refrigerant is now in the condenser, and is hotter than the fresh water, heat from people can pass into the water in the cooling tower. Step 7. The fresh water is in one pipe, and the refrigerant is in another, so they never mix. The fresh water with the heat of the people is carried by the pumps back to the cooling tower. Step 8. Since the water in the cooling tower is hotter than the ambient air, it passes heat from people to the outside environment. As we can see, for there to be heat exchange between two substances, one needs to have a higher temperature than the other. Therefore, heat always passes from the substance of higher temperature to that of lower temperature. So we can say that the substance that loses heat cools and the substance that gains heat gets hot. Furthermore, we can state that the circuit that cools the chiller condenser is basically made up of a pump, piping system, and cooling tower, and it has nothing to do with the ice water circuit that cools the building. At this moment the link to the other episode is appearing, but first subscribe to our channel and continue receiving our classes.